You're now live, Chair.
Now live.
I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Gordon. You just made me host again. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to July's meeting of Rotherham CCG. Welcome anyone who's watching. Although our names are on the screen, we'll just do a quick round of introductions. I'll just go around on my screen, ask you to just identify yourself and your job role. So I'm Richard Cullen, I'm a GP and I'm Chair of Rotherham CCG. Simon?
I'm Simon McEwen, Vice Chair of the GP Members Committee.
John?
I'm John Barber, I'm the lay member for governance.
Sue?
Good afternoon, I'm Sue Caston, I'm the Chief Nurse at the CCG.
Janet?
Hello, I'm Janet Weekly, I'm the lay member for primary care.
Ruth?
Hi, I'm Ruth Brown, Assistant Chief Officer at the CCG.
Debbie?
Afternoon all, I'm Debbie Twell, I'm lay member for patient and public engagement.
Chris?
Chris Edwards, Accountable Officer.
Ben?
Ben Anderson, Director of Public Health at Rotherham Borough Council.
Wendy?
Wendy Ellett, Chief Finance Officer.
Jeff?
Hi, Jeff Avery, GP of Blythe Road, Mulberry, and Chair of Members Committee.
Ryan?
Ryan DeCosta, Consultant Endocrinologist and Secondary Care Representative.
David Roach?
David Roach, Cabinet Member for Public Health and Adult Social Care in Rotherham Council.
Jason?
Jason Page, GP and Vice Chair of the CCG.
Lindsay?
Lindsay Hill, Rotherham CCG, minute taker.
Ian?
Good afternoon, Ian Atkinson, Exec Place Director of CCG.
And David Clitheroe.
David Clitheroe, GP.
Okay, thanks everybody. So I think everyone's here, so we have no apologies. Any declarations of interest on any specific items? Okay. Are there any patient or public questions, Ruth?
No, Chair, we've not received any.
Okay, thank you. So we just move forward then to the draft minutes of the last meeting. For accuracy and any matters arising, there was nothing picked up for an action log. So if anyone thinks any actions being missed, please let us know. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we'll take those as an accurate record. Thank you very much, Lindsay. As I say, there's no action log, so we'll jump straight on up to Chris's Chief Officer's report.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just take you through the Chief Officer's report. I'll just pick out some key headlines and then I'll take questions at the end if that's okay. So just to, as in usual business practice, we keep our August governing body meeting in just in case there's any urgent business required. But having reviewed the business coming through, we think we can cope without an August meeting. So the plan is to not have a meeting in August, so our next meeting would be the first week in September. Obviously, if anything does crop up in the meantime, we would call an exceptional meeting if business needed to be managed. And we would need to alert the public in good time. Since we last met, we've had the long-awaited ICS design framework's been published. I've put a copy in with the papers. And the information containing the design frame is pretty much as we'd have expected. The expectation now is this will form draft legislation and will go through Parliament during the month of July. And then we'll receive final guidance subject to parliamentary approval in the sort of September window, which we'll bring to governing body when we next meet and come up with a plan to implement as per the national wishes. Next on the report is the hospital and community admission aftercare service. So this is just to alert governing body as part of our governance processes about a single open procurement process that's been undertaken to secure services for the community admission aftercare service. the potential providers were invited to submit tenders describing organisations' suitability, approach to delivering services and the relevant infrastructure and commercial information. The process is now concluded and we've awarded a contract to Age UK, and it will commence on the 1st of October for a 2-year period with a 2-year option of extension. That's part of our governance processes too, and just to make sure we're transparent in all our dealings, is any outcomes are expected to be reported to governing bodies. So that's just in line with our processes. Next is an update on the implementation of Fitter, Better, Sooner. You probably all remember this. It was some time ago at the start of the pandemic. We agreed a policy to, it was actually in May 2020 when we agreed the Fitter, Better, Sooner policy to try and ensure that Rotherham patients got the best possible outcomes from surgery. As the waiting lists have grown during COVID-19, we managed it during the pandemic. We had a default position of not implementing this policy while things settle down. But now, as we come out of the as we move to a different phase of the pandemic, we're now looking to start the review of the waiting times for these 3 services again from March 2022. Data security and protection toolkit assessment. This is a statutory requirement for us as an organisation, and we've successfully completed our annual assessment of data security and protection. All 33 assertions across 10 standards have been fully met by the 30th of June 2021 deadline. Again, this has been to our audit committee, but it comes here just for completeness and transparency for assurance for governing body members that we're meeting our statutory requirements. It will now be submitted to NHS Digital for further ratification. And just finally, on the communications update, obviously the COVID-19 vaccination programme is a key feature of what we're informing the public on progress on. Rotherham's and South Yorkshire compare very favourably in terms of the implementation of the vaccination programme. We've been looking at particularly hard to reach groups with different ways of providing vaccinations through pop-up and drop-in sessions, using social media channels, just trying to make sure that we don't have any health inequalities caused by the way we implement the programme. We're trying to make sure all groups can get equal access to the vaccination programme. Just in terms of the communications update, the other thing I'd just highlight is that we're currently trying to have a campaign to help patients access the best service for them in the most efficient and effective way. We're experiencing really significant pressure across our entire portfolio. So primary care services, mental health services, ambulance services, hospital services, community services, the whole remit of our portfolio is under significant pressure. So we're desperately trying to engage with patients so we can get the best possible value for the Rotherham pound and get the best possible access for Rotherham patients. So hopefully we'll be able to help patients access services in the most efficient and effective way so everyone gets the best deal. Okay, I'll stop there, Chair, and just take if there's any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Ben, is there anything I'm putting on the spot, anything you want to say to emphasise the need to everyone to get vaccinated as our public health doctor, as we are in a public meeting?
Yeah, I mean, just, yeah, really strong emphasis. I guess the vaccine and the case data we're seeing coming through definitely shows that case rates are much, much lower in those that have been double vaccinated and slightly lower in those that have been single vaccinated. And the hospitalisation risk and serious illness risk are much lower, and also that transmission is lower amongst people who are vaccinated. So getting the vaccine is the big thing that we want to ask people to do. And yeah, thanks to Gordon and all the comms work that's putting that message out, and thanks to those that are vaccinating as well. It's a massive effort, but we still have, I think, about 35,000 adults left in Rotherham to get vaccinated, so there's still a way to go.
Thanks, Ben. Anybody other questions for Chris? Okay, that's fine. Shall we move on then? Strategic updates. So subject to obviously Chris talking about the ICS design framework, I thought it was important that we got a briefing as a board to how our governance might be moving or what we need to make sure is happening through the transition period. I'm not going to claim credit for this. Ruth, do you want to sort of elaborate on the paper?
Thank you, Chair. So this document sets out the governance principles, hopefully for the next 6 months as we move into transition, to allow us some space and some resources to do the work that we need to do to move the organisation towards its new destination. We were given guidelines in the 2 documents that I've referenced in there. This document will hopefully continue to be a live document. It's not a finished document. Aqua saw it and have seen it previously, but they saw it yesterday and they were quite happy with it. I am happy to take questions on that.
Okay, any questions for Ruth? John, you were happy with Aqua? Were happy with it yesterday, looking at it?
Yes, Chairman. We were content with this. I think I guess Ruth will be continuing to review this at Aqua throughout the year, but we were content with the arrangements and the progress that's been made. We did just have a bit of a discussion about item 5 on risk management and how the GBAF reflects the NHS priorities this year, which was an issue that's been raised by internal audit in terms of their own head of internal audit opinion. So we'll look at that in September at both Aqua and governing body at the updated version of the GBAF.
Thanks, John. Any questions? So if we move to Appendix 2, I think this is a little bit out of date. So there's some suggestions about how we change some of the meeting governance. So just confirm that SE have moved to fortnightly meetings. Janet, I think primary care, has that moved to bi-monthly meetings now?
Yeah, yes it has.
So I think with all our other governance, all our other subgroups moving to sort of a bi-monthly, I would suggest that our public meeting for governing body moves to a bi-monthly organisation. Obviously, we're missing August 1 anyway, so the next planned meeting will still happen, but then to a bi-monthly one. Chris, I think that flows in with what other CCGs around the area are doing, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I think the model tends to be is that other CCGs have moved to an every other month model. However, just one caveat, Chair, was we would reserve the right to call another meeting if any urgent business presented itself. So I think we'd routinely move to an every other month model with that caveat.
Okay, so as a board, are we happy to move to a bi-monthly public governing body meeting? Unless we need to discuss something. So I'm seeing thumbs up and hands up and smiles and yeses. I think that means that we are in agreement. So we will move to a meeting every other month starting in September. Obviously, just like to reiterate, August was already not happening anyway. Okay, thank you then, Ruth. And you'll just that'll keep tracking about the things we need to do. Keep the governing body informed about.
Yeah, I'll keep updating it.
That's great. Okay. Chris, then there's a couple of verbal updates for you next.
Yeah, so thank you, Chair. So just on the integrated care system developing, I covered a little bit under the Chief Officer's report. Just a couple of other updates from me. So obviously we've got the design framework. The bill is now drafted and go through Parliament during the summer. September, we're expecting the calling it a whole raft of documents to come through, and they'll have a more formal status because they'll have parliamentary or should have parliamentary approval if that goes through smoothly. The next stage after that will be we have the chair appointment for the ICS is currently in process still, but we would expect by that point to have a chair announced. And then in the September-October period, the recruitment of the designate executive team would start. So by the autumn, we should have a chair and a designate executive team in place to be able to really drive forward the agenda as we move to the transition from clinical commissioning groups to ICSs. So everything's in train now. We just need to let those landmarks, milestones go through. So that's really I've got. So I don't know if we'll have it ready for our September meeting, but any documentation obviously that comes through, we'll consider at our September meeting. If not, if it comes through later on during September, I may need to do some sort of session with governing body members, Chair, to consider the documentation as it comes through. So if we can just be flexible on that, that would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you,
So
Chris.
that's the ICS debate. Has anyone got any questions on that before I move on to joint committee? Okay, just pause for a second. Okay, I'll keep going then, Chair, while we're going. So the joint committee of the clinical commissioning groups, again, we're looking to, from September, for the joint committee of clinical commissioning groups to take a sort of interim oversight of the development of the ICS. So as the new designate posts come on, they'll join the joint committee of CCGs, and we'll work in partnership with the designate appointments and the clinical commissioning groups to ensure a smooth transition and a smooth handover. As part of that, we started 2 weeks ago as a first transition board, where we're trying to make sure that we have proper transition of all our policies, procedures, all our valuable workforce, all the functions are clearly documented, to make sure that when we move from a CCG to an ICS, everything should be absolutely a smooth transition, and our staff should have absolute protection. They've got an employment guarantee, our staff, and obviously hopefully services for patients should be unaffected as well. So that's all in train now.
Okay, thanks. Debbie.
Chris, could I just ask, I know we raised this, I think, when you were you showed us the proposal for the governing body, and I think this governing body asked to feed back whether or not the size of that was appropriate in terms of being able to make efficient use of governing time and also making decisions. Has that been reflected on within the ICS, and is there going to be a change to that?
So slightly different meetings. So let me just so the joint committee of CCGs is currently the 5 accountable officers of our 5 CCGs and the 5 chairs, who will then work with the designate appointments as they come. That's what I'm referring to now. Debbie, what you're referring to is in the ICS, the design of an ICS, it talks about an NHS statutory body and then a health and care partnership. The health and care partnership is the one you're referring to, with potentially over 50 members on the board in the proposal. That group is yet to form and it's still being considered. I would expect the designate appointments as they come into place to start working through how that'll work. There is a proposal for it to start meeting from September, so those arrangements, but none of that has been finalised. We have certainly given that feedback around the ability of the size of that meeting to do business, and that's been a consistent feedback from all the places, actually, Debbie. So it's still being considered is the state of that, but that's the health and care board as part of an ICS, as opposed to what I'm referring to as the joint committee of clinical commissioning groups. It's just slightly different.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on those 2 updates from Chris? Okay, Ian then, more importantly, Rotherham Place development.
Thanks, Richard. Just following on from Chris there, again, afternoon to everyone. I just thought I'd share with members of the governing body just some work that the place partners are undertaking with the CCG, just starting to prepare in effect to kind of develop the Rotherham Place in readiness for kind of receiving the kind of finalised position of ICS at a national and obviously a regional level. So just to share with members, we have got a group called the design team, led by chief execs, and they've tasked senior colleagues across the Rotherham Place with a number of activities now over the last few weeks and moving forward. So I just thought I'd describe those 2 governing body members, Chair, so that everybody's up to speed with the work of that design team. So firstly, everybody will be aware that 3 years ago now, we agreed a Rotherham Place Memorandum of Understanding in terms of how place partners will work across the system. So we're actively now reviewing that document and updating it in line with some of the national guidance that's coming out. And this is all with a line to being fit for purpose in the Rotherham Place to receive the outcome of kind of ICS design frameworks. We are enhancing our provider collaborative arrangements, which is a requirement across the national guidance. So the provider colleagues working across the system and describing how they're going to work really closely across the Rotherham Place in the coming years, so that we're actively overseeing that piece of work. In recognition of that, we are updating the terms of reference for the place board. Our place board still meeting in public and in confidential, but again, an acknowledgement that the place board in Rotherham will need to change, and the terms of reference will probably change 2 or 3 times actually over coming months as we move closer to an ICS and clear lines of accountability on the requirements of the Rotherham Place. So we are updating those as well. And then finally, which is probably one of the biggest pieces of work, all the places in South Yorkshire are undertaking, in effect, a self-assessment and a maturity assessment in terms of how ready each of our places are in order to kind of receive a delegation and the weight-bearing responsibility into our Rotherham Place. And that's a key piece of work because it cuts across a lot of the work streams that the CCG undertake in partnership with colleagues. And we're self-assessing ourselves in terms of where we think we are now, but importantly identifying actions that we think we need to take over the next 6 to 9 months to ensure that we're absolutely ready to move forward in the next part in our journey of place development. So I just thought I'd share those 4 areas with colleagues. Hopefully that's just a helpful update. As these documents become more kind of formalised, we'll share them back through the governing body, obviously, but it's just to get everybody up to speed with the work, not just at the ICS level, but also quite a lot of traction now taking place in the Rotherham, from a Rotherham perspective, to get us ready for ICSs going forward from next year. I'll take any comments or questions, Richard. Thanks.
Okay, any comments or questions for Ian? No, I think, Ian, just keep up the good work. I think we are a really strong place, very strong relationships between ourselves, the council and the providers. David, I don't know if you'd like to say we do work well alongside the council, don't we? If you can hear us, I'm not sure whether you're there or not.
You're on mute, Councillor Roach. I think we can't hear you.
No, he's not on. You're on mute now. No, you're off. No, you're on mute now.
Right, that's it. Right. Yeah. Some aspects of the ICS development, and this is national level rather than here, does concern me, and I think it does concern some parts of the council as well. We have built up over the last few years excellent partnerships within Rotherham, with the CCG, with the hospital, VAR, and we want to keep those going. So at the moment, to make it accountable, the Place Board in Rotherham feeds into rather the Health and Wellbeing Board, and we see that as crucial. So therefore, we just need from our side to be reassured, and Chris gave some earlier on today some degree of reassurance on this, that that relationship will still be there, even though there will be, if you like, a new master or mistress in terms of the regional ICS. So I think that's our main concern, or else we do have other concerns about the way it's going. Dare I say, the additional powers of the Secretary of State, but that goes beyond what we're here to discuss at this point in Place Board. But I won't go on to those. But yeah, it's just making sure we keep that strong partnership going, which has really helped Rotherham move forward, and making sure it continues to exist.
Thank you, David. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Ian. Moving on then to Neglect to Lifelong Journey, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. The Rotherham Safeguarding Children Partnership launched the Rotherham strategy on the 21st of June this year. The CCG, as one of the 3 statutory partners of the Safeguarding Children Partnership, has been closely involved in this work, and we've undertaken work to help prepare the health workforce for its implementation. The strategy brings all previous strands of work together and builds on these to produce a multi-agency strategy and way of working. We know that neglect is complex and complicated. It can often be hidden, and also hidden in plain sight. It can have far-reaching and long-lasting consequences affecting to adults. And we see some of that play out in the Stovewood investigation into non-recent child sexual exploitation and the consequences into adulthood, as that investigation now involves the older women who were abused during childhood. The CCG GP practice training event in May covered aspects of neglect and it related to the implementation of this strategy. This strategy is a positive step forward, and it also seeks to ensure that the voice of young people's heard, and that their voice informs services that are related to them and their care. There's a link to the full strategy within the document, and I'm happy to take questions and even attempt to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Any questions or comments on this paper? I think it's a really important paper from personal experience as a doctor, seeing the consequences of children who have been neglected for a very short period of time in their early development, and the consequence on the adult is just no one realizes how much those first couple of years in life will affect you as an adult. And so, yeah, I strongly support this. I think the boards were asked to acknowledge the report and promote and support the launch of the neglect strategy. Anyone, any questions or objections to that? Okay, so as a board, that gets our full support.
Thank you. Can I just add one more thing? You just made me think of it there, Chair. In terms of the long-lasting effects, I think there's a much greater awareness of the adverse childhood events and the effects into adulthood now, and that can only be a good thing in terms of informing strategies like this.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to performance report, finance and contracting. Wendy.
Thanks, Chair. Hello, everyone. So the report today is at the end of May, so month 2. And just to sort of refresh our minds, as it's slightly different this year again, because we are talking about a 6-month financial plan. And so when you see the forecast outturn figures, it's just to remind everyone you are only looking at the 6-month forecast rather than a full 12 month. But in summary, in terms of overall performance, it's a positive position so far. We're on track to deliver our financial plan. We've got a 6-month allocation of just over 250 million. And based on the current performance and allowing for the receipt of the additional funds that we expect through the hospital discharge programme, we are anticipating a break-even position at the end of the planning period. So alongside that operational performance picture, at section 2, you'll see that cash and payments both continue to be well managed, and we've got 100% compliance with the national payment targets at month 2. In terms of risks to the financial position, there is more detail at section 12 on the general risks, but if I can just highlight, there are 2 emerging risks since we reported at month 2, 2 specific ones in any case, and one is around prescribing data, where this is a potential positive risk in that we're currently seeing prescribing growth at below the levels that we budgeted for. But it is early days on prescribing, as we all know, and so in effect we've got a little bit of contingency currently built into the position in terms of that. But I think based on 1 month's data, it's too early to claim a trend maybe, and we'll just keep reporting in the normal way, with Meds management team having a lot of oversight on that area. The opposite to that, we've got we're seeing a spike in specialist LD placements, and that is likely to adversely affect the current forecast. But what I would say at this stage, the extent of that net risk feels absolutely manageable within the overall financial envelope. And therefore, I'm literally just giving you the heads up. I don't want to set any hairs running at this stage. And as I say, some wider risks are set out at section 12. So I think that's it. I'll pause there. So that's all I wanted to draw your attention to, but I'm happy, as usual, to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Wendy? No? Okay.
Silence is golden.
That's fine.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Delivery dashboard, which might not be quite so golden. Ian.
Thanks, Richard. So, just as I've done in recent months, I'll just give a quick oversight of the system as well as in terms of system pressure, if I can, Richard, before I just go through the dashboard. So, as colleagues were saying, we have seen over the last 4 to 6 weeks now quite a sustained period of pressure across the whole of our health and care system. So when I described that, the data suggested around 20% increase to 30% in terms of access into primary care. We've seen through the front end of our UECC figures in terms of attendances in the 360 per day on several occasions, and on regular days going over 300 attendances at the UECC. For context, in our busiest winter periods pre-pandemic, when we were kind of in the January view, our highest ever day was 360. So you can see the presentations there significantly increasing. In the area of mental health, again, we're seeing some real pressure with bed availability and flow, and also demand on community mental health services. So our system is really quite challenged at the minute, as are many other areas, as we kind of come out the other side of this phase of the pandemic. And I do think we do describe it as a phase in the pandemic, as Chris said. In terms of our performance, in terms of the vaccination programme, I know Chris briefly mentioned the comms side of things there. I'll just mention it at the high level at this point. We have continued to be really successful in the vaccine programme. We've had a really good 4 to 6 weeks in this latest cohort of the 18 to 29s. Our programme's adjusted to different models of delivery, as Chris and Ben were alluding to. But where that puts us as of now is just shy of 84% of the Rotherham registered patients having had their first dose, and just shy of 69% having had their second dose. So we're really pleased about that. But as Ben was describing, this is not something that we're going to stop. So we are going to continue to look at different ways of accessing the vaccination programme. We can talk about that if we need to just after this commentary, Chair. So other points of performance challenge at the moment, our IAP services continue to kind of perform in line with our expectations contractually. We are focusing a lot at the moment on recovery of elective care, and I know there's a paper in the confidential section where we're going to go through the detail of that and just share with colleagues some further information. But what you can see in this performance report now is, although we're not delivering on our 18-week targets, you can see improvement in the elective position across the Rotherham Place in terms of specialties improving month on month, which is testament to the hard work of colleagues across our hospital services in terms of dealing with that demand and waiting list position. We have seen the number of 52-week waiters drop quite significantly from we were just shy of 1,000 around December and out 472, an absolute commitment to try to get those to zero by the end of the financial year, which will be a huge task and ask of colleagues. But again, they're going in the right direction. Our diagnostic performance is an area of concern. It continues to kind of be in that kind of 25% range, so therefore 75% being delivered within the 6 weeks. However, you recall that we're at 99% pre-pandemic, so that is an area of challenge. And our cancer performance is improving slowly, but again, we know that that's pressure in the space. And I think quite a lot of the feedback that I am now getting from primary care colleagues, and I know I've got a number of them on here and they can speak for themselves, is that along with the pressure that primary care are seeing, they're also seeing individuals that may need to be kind of referred down that elective pathway over the coming weeks who they've tried to manage in the community for 12, 18 months. Primary care have tried to manage them. So that may be a bubble of unmet need that we just need to be observing over the coming months. So yeah, I'd say it's an improving picture in terms of direction of travel, Chair, in terms of getting all those elective services going, reducing 52-week waits, some improvements in our cancer performance, but a system that's under real pressure at the moment. So I hope that gives colleagues a fair summary of the position. I'm happy to take any comments or questions, or if anybody else wants to answer that, feel free. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ian. David, then Jason.
I think the other group that you kind of possibly alluded to at the end, Ian, is people that have been referred into a pathway and then have a significant wait, either for a procedure or an outpatient's appointment, and then representing either into primary care or presenting as emergencies, which I think is something that the Trust was speaking about earlier today and aware of that is an issue. So that's also adding to the pressures within the system, both in emergency care and primary care. And as you mentioned, it's kind of unprecedented this time of year, the pressure within primary care with a number of appointments that are being done just as we're about to enter the school summer holiday season, when staff traditionally have dropped off to get the holidays, which most of us, I think, are pretty desperate to get. So it's just very busy, basically.
Jason?
Yeah, just to comment on cancer performance, it is starting to tick upwards. In fact, just yesterday, I had a meeting with Dr. Athy, Vicky Athy at the Trust, where we look at the cancer breaches. And it does feel as though, we're getting back more to a normal system. There's getting fewer and fewer delays due to COVID. The diagnostics are very challenged, but MDTs and outpatients seem to be performing much better. So I'm hopeful that the upwards tick will continue. Thanks.
I mean, Ryan, how do you feel? From a secondary care doctor's point of view, how are you feeling at the moment?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see the figures which show that the non-medical specialties seem to be doing fairly, that seems to be more challenged compared to the medical specialties as such, which seem to be making their pathways and patients appear to be accessing and receiving treatment. I know we are facing similar issues within our own organization. The issue is that obviously over the last 18 months or so, ever since this pandemic started, a lot of the elective work had been suspended. Only emergencies were happening, and a lot of the surgeons, were only the surgeons were tackling the emergency work. And now that the pandemic has somewhat kind of abated and elective work has recommenced, there is a huge backlog. And I think the challenge is trying to squeeze all that 12 months elective work into this narrow window. And people, like David said, people are away, and there are people who, in the context of, you can only do so much, I think, for operating spaces and outpatients and things like that. So it's going to be a very, very long, hard battle ahead of us. And we see that in the front end as well, because we get a lot of patients who are coming in to see us they're coming in as acute because, for whatever reason, they've not been able to have their procedure, increasing pain management, and some patients are finding it also quite difficult to access their primary care doctors who are busy with catching up with their own work, vaccinations and other things. So we get it a lot when you're talking to patients, and they are completely aware that GPs are inundated and they're so busy. But I think that at the end of the day, I think they end up coming into A&E sometimes. And that's something that will challenge an already kind of bursting system. I don't know, sorry, I'm going on a bit, but I don't know whether there has been any work done with A&E to look at the attendances and how many people there have actually attended because they are finding it difficult to access primary care or pharmacy or other alternative streams.
David, are you responding to that? Is your hand up?
It was talked about. There's an A&E meeting on a weekly basis, and they were presenting some sort of baseline data, and they're talking. They're averaging about 60 or 70 patients a day, I think, that are sort of in their primary care stream, which is higher than what they would normally expect to see. Although interestingly, Kay Stenton was on a sort of more regional call yesterday, who's one of the lead A&E consultants, and she was saying that primary care numbers seem relatively similar to sort of the pre-pandemic numbers, but they are getting significant numbers of what they would describe as their majors patients that are converting into admission or needing workup within ED. And that seems, from her point of view, seems to be more of the pressurized zone. But as Ryan was saying, a lot of those patients, or some of those patients, it's notable, have been referred or waiting for treatment or have had delayed in their long-term condition management due to the pandemic. So there's a multitude of factors, it seems, that's sort of pressurising the whole system. I think some of it's overflow from primary care, because primary care is the day just never ends at the moment. So I think it's probably just a number of factors that have all come together in one fair swoop that's pressurising everybody. I think everyone's incredibly busy. But I think they are looking at the numbers within ED of those types of patients, trying to categorise where they've come from and where they sit.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. Just kind of as you were talking about that, David, I had a kind of idea. I'm sure this has been probably thought of before, or maybe already exists. But one of the things that could be helpful, particularly in the context of A&E management of those patients who are finding it difficult to access their primary care, if they had like 2 GPs camped out in A&E, for example, and as soon as these people came, they were kind of bypassed, and that would ease the pressure on the patients who or the staff in A&E who need to see the sicker patients. Yeah,
they already run a primary care stream, so
okay.
They do have GPs available. Whether the stream is fully staffed, I'm not sure, but they do certainly have GPs that work in A&E within a dedicated stream of patients. It's just I think the numbers are much higher than they would normally see.
Okay, yeah, it's just busy everywhere. I think that's the problem. We're looking for slack in the system where there is no slack.
And what about things like same-day or ambulatory care? Is that something which is started with the Foundation Trust? Or
yeah, I think we're looking at all those things. I think, yeah, David, if you want to give a full briefing to Ryan about everything we're doing, because I think we want you to spot the gaps, but yeah, I think we've addressed everything you mentioned.
You've already done that, yeah.
I think David.
I don't think I have an easy solution. I'm just kind of. I think everybody is very much kind of fighting this thing really hard, and I think the only reassurance is that the number of cases is kind of reduced quite significantly of COVID patients. They are trickling in still, and I mean, I was on call last night and I had one patient who had come in. So they are not gone, they are still there, and we still need to be vigilant. And I think that the other things are still coming through. So we need to be working, I think, twice as hard here.
Yeah, that's fine. I think, but David, if you just give Ryan a brief on everything we're actually doing, because if Ryan spots anything we're missing, we'll be very happily steal any of your ideas.
Yeah,
we'll all be happy to find something that we haven't done, but that'd be great. Moving on, Ben.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to come in as a bit of a voice of doom on this one. So I know it's really good to hear from Ryan that the numbers going into the trust are low, and definitely seeing that vaccine effect, reducing that. But we are in a sort of 7-8 day doubling period in terms of the case rate in the community. And well, undoubtedly there will be some people from that who end up going as COVID admissions. But I think the other thing that's going to start to put pressure on the trust is there'll be people who end up going in as other admissions with COVID, and again have to be managed separately and cohorted, etc. So yeah, I did share that with the trust last week. Sort of some of the forecasts going forward that we do expect to get up to the 400, 500 per 100,000 case rates in the next few weeks, and that could put considerable pressure on. And I guess the other area of pressure that it brings is the amount of staff who are either isolating or currently at least looking after children whose school bubbles have burst and their schools are closing. Obviously, we've only got another week of term after this one for that to happen, and then the rules around schools will change for the new term, and also the rules around isolation will change for those who are double vaccinated in August. Although healthcare settings may want to look at whether they follow those national rules or whether they have more stringent rules locally, because I think there will be some risks to that It's obviously about learning to live with the risks and getting the right balance, but I think we do need to examine as a system what is the right balance when you've got a duty of care to patients and your front line.
Thanks, Ben. David Roche. David, your hand was up.
Yeah, just to say, I've been trying not to say anything, but I'm going to have to. I couldn't resist anymore. I mean, I'm fully aware from these meetings and from place board meetings about the pressures which primary care is under and the reasons behind that. But I think the other side of it too is the patients. I'm aware of at least one GP practice, which all it says on their website, and I think it's far better to go via our website to get an appointment. We have no appointments, and you scroll through dates. In my case, for at least 2 months in advance, we have no appointments. I think it would ease frustrations if GP practices could just have a short, polite paragraph as to why there's so much pressure there, because I say it is creating, with a number of people that's contacted me, an awful lot of frustrations.
We'll take that back to the primary care team and fire them to the practices to look at that, David. Thank you. Okay, Jeff.
Sorry, I'm getting my mood. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, communication is king, isn't it, in terms of as far as passing information through to people on Facebook. I mean, some of it is national, that we're sort of forced to put things on that people can book things through the internet is fine, but it's only defined numbers, and it's only sort of pre-booked appointments. So, as you say, from a lay point of view, that suggests that the GP's not seeing anything new booked in the next 2 months other than what's already booked in. But that might only be like 5 or 10% of what their appointment slots are, and there are still sort of appointments on the day. So yeah, we have to balance sort of what we're doing. But I appreciate that if you go on a practice's website, that isn't communicated, is it? If that's the case, it's sort of giving people the balance of being able to book stuff. I mean, NHS England, I think, were after us a while ago to release 50% of his appointments. I think they're quite happy to let us have 100%, but we could then be in the position that actually we're booked up for 3 weeks in advance and have no capacity for sort of urgent care as well. But 100% I accept from a patient's point of view to say, please book online, save the reception, and you scroll through and there's nothing there for 2 months. It seems a bit of a pointless exercise.
Okay, Debbie.
I just wanted to perhaps reassure everybody around the table that we are listening very carefully to patients at the moment. And coming up this next week, we've got a PPG network meeting, which is focusing on about what it's like to access GP services, but also about expectations and new ways of working. And we've also got Healthwatch this July. They've got a Let's Talk event, which is open to everybody, which is about listening to patients again about what their experience is. So that information will be able to be flowed into the CCG quickly, and we can share with patients any information that the GPs have got with them, about the experiences that they can expect to receive from our fantastic staff on the ground. So this next week is a very busy week in terms of those conversations happening directly with patients.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. Any other? Well, I was going to say any other solutions to how we deal with the workload, but I think we've thought of them already. So we'll thank you, Ian. Are there any questions about anything else from Ian? We'll move on then to Safety and Quality Assurance Report, which I suppose is quite timely after that discussion. Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I seem to have got an unstable internet connection, so I apologise if I'm sounding a bit like a Dalek at times, but I'll soldier on. The report, the Safety and Quality Report starting there, it starts with the usual healthcare associated infection update. You can see C.diff figures for TRFT, standard 3 above plan, and for Rotherham as a whole at 5 below plan, and the previous year's figures for the same month below those figures. E. coli numbers for the trust below plan, and going up there when we look across community as well for Rotherham as a whole. All the associated work to investigate all these cases continues, with a close linking from the CCG infection prevention control nurse. we are seeing, we've mentioned already, we've seen local case numbers of COVID rising across Rotherham. We are seeing a small rise currently, but it's a watch and wait situation, isn't it, in the number of COVID positive patients in the hospital. And although we're not seeing the numbers of people becoming seriously ill with COVID, we're still in the early days of seeing those numbers rise, and the associated problems as Ben has already outlined in terms of being able to manage areas within the hospital when you've got patients who are COVID positive in there. Work to review and investigate mortality rates at the Foundation Trust continues. We're focusing on the 6 outlying areas all described within the report, though you'll see that crude mortality in month fell to expected levels in April of this year. On to the safeguarding section. This refers to the launch of the neglect strategy that we've already mentioned, and also the case for change independent review of children's social care. Work on this started on the 1st of March this year and continues at pace to identify the biggest challenges. There's now an ask for feedback, and the link for this is within the document. This week is International Safeguarding Week, and events have been and still are available through the NHS Futures workspace. There's also a link to useful information regarding liberty protection, safeguards, and the Mental Capacity Act. The CCG's provided a safeguarding supervision session covering, among other things, documentation, safeguarding during COVID, professional curiosity, feedback from serious case reviews, and liberty protection safeguards. A Mental Capacity Act workshop is being facilitated for GP practices during their in-house training in October, provided by Beechcroft, and further supervision sessions will be offered in September and December. The CHC section has links to related documents and updates on the Rotherham CHC activity. As you'll see, the funding of up to 6 weeks care post-discharge from hospital to enable appropriate assessments to take place in terms of CHC and social care. That has been in place for some time and was in place for Q1. During Q2, this drops to 4 weeks of funded care. The CHC teams, staff teams are aware and are progressing all CHC assessments. The priorities and operational guidance related to CHC showed that system and hospital discharge shows that systems have achieved significant reductions in long hospital stays during the 2021 year, enabling more patients to be cared for in optimal settings and reducing pressure on hospitals by improving flow and freeing up capacity. The primary care section of the report summarises contract quality visits undertaken with GP practices during February, April and June. These are still taking place virtually and continue to be well received by the practices as a joint approach to sharing the learning as well. There's an update on work undertaken by the Foundation Trust to address agreed actions arising from recommendations from all the recent CQC inspections. The CCG has also undertaken a quality risk profile in partnership with the Trust and NHS England and Improvement to review areas of risk and where support can be given. And this is being monitored via the CCG contract quality meetings. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Sue. Any questions for Sue? Okay. It's the usual comprehensive report. Thank you, Sue. Do you want to move on to engagement and experience?
Yep, thank you. The challenges to engaging and collecting experience information continue. As you'll see within the report, there are some comments that have been shared informally with the patient and public engagement manager through one of the community networks, and so they are snapshots out of lengthier comments, but you can see that people have been struggling with the confidence, and the vaccination programme does appear on the face of it to be supporting people to gain some of that confidence. I did reach a point where I was losing confidence. I'm reading this out, this isn't me, in going to a hospital appointment. I should have seen my ophthalmologist about 3 months ago, but I'd put it off until I'd been doubly vaccinated. Is a clear message about how that person felt about going out until they received the vaccination. And towards the end of that section, I've become a little bolder in seeing friends close up. So people's confidence does seem to be growing. There's still a lot of work to do there. Friends and family test is still a challenge in terms of collecting meaningful information there. We include it as it continues to grow as it's implemented and collect more meaningful information. It's very difficult when there are very low response rates to gain anything across the patch there. And an outline of other working contacts across the month from Helen. Work with the Maternity Services Liaison Group, just picking out a couple there. And preparation, Debbie's already mentioned, for the next patient participation group network meeting next week, and in the Rotherham Adult Mental Health Provider Network Voluntary Care Sector. It's just an outline of work undertaken there. And at the end of the report, in the appendices, the Health Watch June newsletter, and another couple of Health Watch documents there that I've included.
Okay. Anything else to add, Debbie?
And I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah. Thanks, sir. Anything else to add, Debbie? Oh, you're still on mute.
Still mute? No, that's it. Just like I said earlier, we are listening carefully wherever we can. It is difficult because obviously we're having to do things on Zoom and those sorts of things is for everybody. Thank you, Jason, for just sending me some ideas of things that we can share with patients about why it's difficult to get to the flow, the throughput of patients in surgeries. That's just happened literally in the last 5 minutes, which was great. So we'll share those next week with our patient participation group, but we are listening carefully to what they want to tell us. Health Watch, our partners, and VAR are also feeding information into us. So, the conversation is happening.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Sue or Debbie? Okay, thank you then. We'll move on to corporate business. So, Ruth, Instrument Control Team Log.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper is going to update you about the close down of the Strategic Incident Control Team. And this team was set up to manage the COVID-19 pandemic for the CCG. This close down of the team doesn't mean that if the incident starts to hot up, we won't reinstate the control team. Obviously we will, but for now it's closed and all the actions have either been closed or moved to continuing groups to pick up. Aqua saw this yesterday as a piece of assurance and we're happy with the update. I'll pause there and take any questions if you've got any.
Okay, John, any comments from Aqua?
Not really, Richard. I mean, I think we were asked to note the close down, and we saw no reasons, to challenge that. It seemed very appropriate, and we saw the appendix there on the issues log showing the completeness of that. So we were content with that. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions or comments? I can't believe you condensed over years kind of extraordinary work we've done in a year into like even just 28 pages. I was expecting a 120-page document of everything we've done. It's amazing that you could condense it down. So that you and your team doing the minutes accurately, excellent. But yeah, it's been you remind yourself everything that happened over last year. It's just amazing how everything has changed and everything over last year. But yeah. So Jeff's clapping. Any other questions or anything on this? No, fine. Transitional recruitment guidance then, Ruth.
Ian's picking this one up for me, Chair. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. If I can just cover this one. I've just got a weak internet connection. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, so this follows on from some of our dialogues earlier in the meeting, just around as we start to transition from the CCG across into an integrated care system and a new statutory organisation. So this paper came to audit committee yesterday into ACWA, but there's a couple of things that were just in terms of recruitment. Across all South Yorkshire CCGs, just taking this paper through for consistency with a view that will apply guidelines as set out under section 1, Chair, and the bullet points there. I'm not going to read them through, but then also proposals around local vacancy control processes to ensure that we're consistent in that space as we transition. Now, the recommendations within here, if governing body agree with the proposal in terms of getting consistency across the places, across the 5 CCGs, that we would need to amend our recruitment policies, and they need to come into effect now as of July. So just bringing that through for any comments or feedback, but final ratification as well today. Thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions on this? Okay, it seems a fairly obvious thing to do. So is the board happy to ratify this paper? I shall take silence as assent. I think we're all happy. I see thumbs up and everything going up as well. Okay, so we have ratified that. Thank you, Ian. Right. 2 things then. Can someone just tell Stuart that he needs to be logging on? And Ian, do you want to do with evidence-based interventions?
Will do. Thanks, Richard. So evidence-based interventions links to our Commissioning for Outcomes policy. So colleagues will have not received an update on Commissioning for Outcomes for a while as yet, but within there are some nationally determined evidence-based interventions. And in the November 2020 guidance, colleagues will have read in this paper that nationally they set out an additional 31 tests, treatments and procedures where there was limited evidence around the effectiveness and appropriateness. So through the national NHS standard contract, it's the expectation that the additional evidence-based interventions are not routinely commissioned by CCGs. As a collective, therefore, across South Yorkshire and via the Joint Committee of CCGs, we've updated our Commissioning for Outcomes policy that reflect those now. So we're bringing those back through into governing bodies for support in this meeting, Chair. So I wasn't going to go through all the changes, but they are there in terms of what has been changed in the policy in the summary there. So again, it just continues to build our approach across South Yorkshire, both for Commissioning for Outcomes and evidence-based interventions. I do think there's a piece of work that we will want to do across CCGs, and actually as we go into the ICS into next financial year, around how each place are applying these consistently with our local providers, and not just overseeing them consistently, but also monitoring them consistently and getting into that granular detail. So I'll pause there, Chair. Hopefully it's pretty self-explanatory, because I know members of the governing body will have seen this policy a number of times over the years.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay. Ian, just on the recommendations.
Yeah.
I don't think it went to the Joint Committee on the 24th of June. So
did not, Richard. Okay, well I
just looked at the agenda and I couldn't remember. I've looked at the agenda and it wasn't on.
Right. Okay. Can I just take an action then, just to double check that back with the Joint Committee admin, and if for any reason it's coming back, we'll just feed in the appropriate note and then feed back to governing body the next time we meet as an action. Is that okay, Richard?
Yeah. So yeah, just Chris, you can't remember. I can't remember it being at Joint Committee. No. So I think the governing body is happy to note the paper and everything subject to the endorsement of the Joint Committee, but it hasn't been endorsed yet. So it just needs to come back when we've got the endorsement, when the joint committee has agreed it.
Yeah, we can do that, Richard, no problem. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Right. Has anyone managed to get hold of? Will Stuart be here in 2 minutes?
Yeah, he's saying join in now, Richard. I've got a text. It's saying join in now. He's not in a lobby, is he, or something?
No, I've just checked. He's not in the lobby. He's probably still just trying to connect to the lobby.
And that was literally 14:07.
I was just going to make some really nerdy parliamentary comment about which lobby he'd been into and things, but it's too late in the afternoon to start being a parliamentary nerd, but a politics nerd. Do you just want to deal with the NE delivery board minutes then, Ian? We'll just go through the minutes quickly. Anything to note on that?
Nothing specific, Chair. For information, happy to take any questions. It will reflect some of the dialogue that I presented earlier, just in terms of system pressure and challenge, and also, dare I say it, reference into planning for winter and surge. So that's kind of where we are in the discussion there in the delivery board. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Ian? Okay. He's still not in the lobby. Comms and engagement. Debbie, anything?
Yeah, that's the May meeting, Chair. Took a number of, you can already see that even back there we were looking at primary care access and expectations and need and things. We also looked at what was then just published Rotherham Send strategy, which we endorsed, looking at conversations with intermediate care enablement, so pushing for patient voice within that. And obviously all the communications work that we've been doing with our partners. And can I just say, because I can't believe I missed this at the previous moment when I had a chance to do it, that in July, by the end of July, we'd had 20,000 volunteer hours supporting the vaccination programme across Rotherham. I usually give everybody an update, so 20,000 hours as of the end of July.
That's fantastic. Okay, any questions or comments other than claps and everything for the volunteers? No? Okay. ICS, HEG, minutes. Chris?
Yes, I wasn't going to make any specific comments. I think the minutes of they're there for people to see for transparency. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to take them, but they're there really for information.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay. He's still not managed to log on. You're getting close to Wendy having. Wendy's desperately on the phone because I'm going to make her present it if she's not careful. Jeff, Members Committee.
I'm mindful how long can I drag things out for Wendy then? Yeah, May's meeting, which I wasn't at, but yeah, minutes just for people to be aware of, discussions on COVID, and there's quite a lot of discussion about the mental health extra workers and transformation and the ICS representation.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Any questions, comments? No. Oh. Looks like Wendy's presenting the medicines management then.
Unless you go through the glossary, Richard, if you want.
I might ask her any other business. I better not.
Richard, if it's helpful, I did hear Stuart present this yesterday to Aqua. I could give it half a go, probably slightly more effectively than Wendy, but don't mind volunteering if he's any length of time.
I don't know, Wendy's. I assume Wendy's on the phone to the thing is, Wendy's now trying to be the IT expert to get him connected into the thing. And oh, he's here. Is he
there, Richard?
There.
You're in. Richard can see you. Okay. See you soon.
I love the thought that Wendy was trying to be the IT expert to avoid being the prescribing expert.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. No, I just had to. Which one?
Okay.
Oh yeah, we can hear you, Stuart.
Okay, that's fine. Sorry, guys, you just wouldn't let me in. I've just nipped out of Armagh, just pushing back a cost pressure they're trying to land our way, and it just wouldn't let me in. It was just whirling around forever. But I'm here now. Okay, so you've got the annual.
Just quickly, Stuart. You're in a public meeting. So what does RMOG stand for?
Sorry, the Rotherham Medicines Optimisation Group. It's the Joint Medicines Management Oversight Committee for ourselves, the CCG, RDASH, and TRFT as well. That's where we look at the interface issue.
It's just you. Go ahead, Stuart.
So, okay, you've got the annual report. Do you want me to go through it and bring out various highlights, or do you just want me to ask questions or fire questions at me? I can do it either way.
I think we all always need to celebrate the success of the medicine management.
Okay, I'm up for that.
Bring out some brief highlights.
So I apologise to some of the faces who are on the meeting, because this is probably the third time you've heard this, but okay. So the annual report for the financial year, April 2020 to 21, we finished the financial year with a cost growth of 2.84%. That was below the average for England and the Yorkshire and Humber region, and also the lowest cost growth in South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw. That cost growth added £1,183,000 to our costs. £800,000 of that was due to, which is 67.5%, was due to NCSO issues. That stands for no cheaper stock obtainable. So in that situation, these are the drugs are not available at drug tariff price. The antidepressant sertraline accounted for £680,000 of that of our cost pressure, which is 85% of the NCSO cost pressure and 57.5% of the total cost pressure for that year. So these are issues that we really can't do anything about. We can't switch patients to an alternative antidepressant. It's just not that easy. And sertraline is the sort of first line antidepressant recommended by NICE due to its better cardiovascular profile. So we also are quite a heavy user of antidepressants in Rotherham. We have a project looking at that, which I'll come on to later on. So nearly 60% of our cost pressure was down to one drug, and 67% of our cost pressure this year was due to issues that we can't manage. We've got strong cost pressures on the anticoagulants, the DOACs, the direct-acting anticoagulants, which are a replacement of warfarin, that contributed a further £470,000 or a 13% cost growth this year. Interestingly, nationally, we're right in the middle of the pack on this. So our usage of DOACs is definitely in line with national trend. However, the benefits that were claimed to arise from DOACs, which is the reduced reduction in strokes, particularly strokes around AF, nationally are not being seen, despite the fact that the nation is very much moving towards those. There was also a recommendation at the beginning of the COVID lockdown to switch patients to DOACs, as it prevented them coming in for having to blood test for warfarin, which again, that didn't really alter the growth that we're seeing in these agents. And interestingly, are predicting that the growth pattern will continue for these, which is about £400,000 a year for the next two years at least. Still strong growth on diabetes drugs, but we have got some work streams that are looking at that, as we do have the highest diabetes costs per diabetic patient in Yorkshire and Humber, and we're not really getting the outcomes that we want, despite that large investment in prescribing. If you look at graph 2, that outlines our cost growth, and you can see that our cost growth is following national trend, but below it. We did have a peak, which was a little bit worrying in April, in the first April 2020, first month of real lockdown, when due to issues in the supply of a lot of self-care drugs, products went back onto prescription, but we've reined that back. And graph 3 shows you what the NCSO issues were for the year. We are a high volume prescriber in that we issue a lot of prescriptions in Rotherham, as does most of the north of England, and certainly to the CCGs that we're matched against. Our item growth was minus 1.84% for the year, below the average for Yorkshire and Humber, again the lowest in SYB, and just above that for England. Interestingly, we saw an increase in antidepressant prescriptions of 4.7% compared to 4% nationally. Antibacterial prescribing decreased in prescription numbers by 21%. That's compared to a 17% nationally. We are expecting to see a rebound growth in that area as we come out of lockdown and patients start mixing more. But hopefully, as we were a high volume of antibiotics high volume prescribing of antibiotics, we hope to maintain some of that cost growth over the that decrease in prescribing over the next couple of years. There was a wide variation of practice growth between between 9.5% positive to minus 1.6% in cost growth, which we're looking at individual practices as the reasons behind that. Despite it being a difficult year, we did manage to deliver a restricted QIP program, and we did attribute £650,000 worth of efficiencies to that QIP program during the year. The details are given below for that QIP program. And sorry, there is a slight typo there because it's a cut and paste. The outcomes are for 2021, not 1920. I apologise for that. We also managed a reasonable saving against the oxygen contract, and this just shows you how things can unravel. We were very good at managing oxygen. It then went to a regional post, and we just noticed that costs were actually increasing. So we've put effort back into managing this locally. We found out that the medical physics person was on maternity leave who did a lot of oxygen reviews. So we've actually sort of put the pathway back together, and we managed to reduce oxygen prescribing over a difficult year by £158,000, 26% cost reduction. Difficult year for the care homes team, as they've not been able to get into care homes, but we have made progress. We're looking to get 45% of our care homes ordering by proxy, which basically means electronic ordering rather than ringing up practices, doing it all electronically, and that's an NHS England work stream. On average, the care home team are ordering for 556 residents per month, and over the year they made 3,327 clinical interventions. We made cost savings due to waste and just over £35,000, way below expectations, but that's because we couldn't get into care homes. In the first 2 months of this financial year, we've made cost savings due to waste reductions of around 12,000. That shows the potential we've got there. Also put in some of the interventions that care home teams are doing, because they are doing some absolutely fantastic interventions and improving the sort of patient outcomes and the patient care. We revised the prescribing incentive scheme for this year. We had to because, again, we didn't set practice budgets, so we couldn't link the prescribing incentive scheme to performance against practice budgets. Even though we ran it over only 6 months, we got the best performance ever, largely due to the practice pharmacists and PCN pharmacists taking ownership of this incentive scheme, and 349 of the potential 277 criteria were met. Difficult year, but we've managed to have some progress. We changed the prescribing intervention software from ScriptSwitch to OptimizeRx. We've secured funding for some dietitians to work around the diabetes pathways, looking at focusing on weight loss as the initial intervention to help manage our high diabetes prescribing costs. We've got a multidisciplinary project underway looking at improving, working with dietitians again, hydration in care homes, which could potentially prevent 260 hospital admissions a year, 2,000 bed days. We're looking at a local pathway for the treatment of wet AMD, which again potentially has the ability to offer substantial cost savings as generic and biosimilar drugs come into the market. And we've just started the audits to look at opioid prescribing, another area where Rotherham could prescribe better, looking at chronic opioid prescribing in chronic pain. And we've very successfully launched a program reviewing patients who are on antidepressants, and we're getting some data through that, and it's really, really encouraging. Our objectives for 2021, we want to keep cost growth below 3%, not 5%. The budget's been uplifted by 3.5, but we're aiming for a cost growth below 3%. We have got a QIP program for 21-22, and that's constantly being revised depending on what access we can get to practices. We're looking at revisiting some of the stalled projects around QIP and around pathway redesign. We've got exciting plans around diabetes, working with dietitians. We're hopefully trying to get a pilot chronic pain clinic up and running. And again, we're looking at increasing our work with GRFT regarding drugs that non-PBR drugs, the drugs that are off tariff that get cross-charged to us. Further developments are planned for the care home team, and further developments for the antidepressant review clinics. So that's kind of the headed highlights. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Stuart. Any questions, Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I mean, again, I'd agree with Richard in terms of, you've done a great job in terms of prescribing in a difficult year as far as that. Things are sort of tricky. You sort of might think antibiotics might have gone up if we're sort of seeing fewer patients and working remotely, which didn't, and antidepressants, I know you said sort of gone up, but it's still sort of the same, but there's a massive amount of mental health sort of issues out there. I think the prescribing scheme that you put through was sort of good under circumstances as far as like the timescale and what we were all trying to manage, as well as just it's a minor sort of thing. I think just within that, just as in one sense, I suppose, is like moving on, which is only then this year CCG wise, but it's difficult to choose what to put in. But I feel a bit poacher terms gamekeeper and sort of conflicted in terms of GP wise. But so the antifungal sort of swap as far as like save £2,400, but we sort of get paid for each sort of is it 10 pence for each patient you've got. There was probably like a tenfold payout for that. So actually it's better that it's in there, and it did save money, but actually the sort of practice got reimbursed, and it's quite a lot of work for them to go through. That's probably a bit disproportionate. So within the whole scheme, it's only like one thing. If we were looking forwards, it's important to make sure that what we are doing is appropriate, isn't it? And sort of works. Just again, you did say with the nursing homes, as far as them trying to encourage them to ask for prescriptions electronically. Did you say that's running at 45%? Because again, with like COVID and the circumstances we've been under, I'd sort of personally sort of think that we should be aiming for that sort of being 100%, or certainly 95%, not sort of 45. So again, we've had it in practice before, isn't it? It's in paper form. But if we sort of all move into EPS and electronically, those figures sort of sound quite sort of low as far as that. And I suppose again, that's if we as PCNs and practices trying to sort of work with the nursing home sort of closer, is that something that needs sort of picking up, that it's part of those sort of processes? So I know the process of going into nursing homes is like patient centered, but practice-wise, I think that we should all be sort of trying to make sure we're sort of pressing the right sort of levers as far as like making sure that the repeats are sort of on requested electronically.
So, I agree with you. Things like antifungals, it was the very small project. When we're looking at our prescribing catalogue across the piece, we are really struggling to find switches and swaps now, Jeff. It's kind of, and this is why we're trying refocusing the team to work on more complex things, such as the whole diabetes pathway, the chronic pain pathway, because it's increasingly, it's not what we prescribe, it's the volume that goes out, and whether we're actually trying to rely too much on pharmacological interventions in certain areas and failing to review patients enough. So that's where we're trying to focus our activity going forward. It's really difficult to find, if you look at the cost effectiveness of what we prescribe, it's really difficult to find very more to go at there. And with the incentive scheme, we did really struggle to actually get something up and running for 6 months. But yeah, I agree. Some of the criteria in there we felt, but I think we wanted to keep that engagement. We wanted to keep traction. With proxy ordering, the NHS England target is 25%. We signed up to the higher target of 45% because we already hit 25%. The problem that we're having is getting into practices and care homes resistant. So I've noted your comments, Jeff. How many care homes you got at Blythe Road? Because you're now going to be top of the list to go electronic.
It's a bit weird as far as that, because we've actually got 3, but there's one's like a reasonable size and 2 are smaller.
The size doesn't matter. It's just the number of care homes and whether they're electronic or not. So small's even better because it makes it look better on NHS England's performance thing. So I've made a note. Blythe Road is really keen to pursue electronic ordering in care homes.
Even more so, yeah. I mean, the comment about the scheme, as I say, it wasn't a criticism. It was more sort of a reflection. And as I said, at 100%, we were all under whatever circumstances, and you could have turned around and said, "Well, we'll not have a scheme this year. You're all too busy." I'm happy we sort of did put work into that, and it's still relevant that was something that we've sort of looked at, isn't it? And yeah, we've still got the scheme for this year, so it doesn't matter after that.
I agree on the reflection, Jeff, on some of them. I must admit, we felt like we were scraping the barrel a little bit to get something up and running for 6 months that you could do in 6 months, kind of thing. That was still relevant.
Except if you say like moving that on, it's like I do think as well as the sort of additional roles in terms of PCNs and practices as far as pharmacy, that we seem to have sort of more of a pharmacy team. So it's easier as practices to sort of ask those teams to sort of start putting into sort of some of those work stream, which I think again is a good thing, but also why potentially we had sort of better returns or engagement in a sense. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for volunteering anyway, Jeff. Ryan.
Yeah, hi Stuart, thanks for that.
Hi.
So basically, one of the things that I was just wondering whether has been put in place, particularly in the context of diabetes management, is maybe utilizing your community pharmacists to review medications for people who are on diabetes medications, because the trap is that you have got people who are taking increasing amounts of different therapies when despite them being ineffective, and that's something which needs to be reviewed. We have a system here which where GPs, for example, who are continuing to prescribe GLP-1 receptor agonists for people with diabetes, they have to justify its usage beyond 6 months of treatment if they are not fulfilling nice criteria. So those simple things can perhaps be looked at, and you might find that you're rationalizing medications a little bit more effectively. You don't need to see a doctor for that. It's even GP pharmacists who can do that sort of work. But no, thanks. I know it's incredibly difficult, your job, but these are little things. Perhaps I thought I should point out this is something that we've done locally.
The issues around diabetes are long-standing, but I do feel that we're in a position now to make some traction. Our biggest issue actually appears to be around insulin, in that the amount of insulin that we use per diabetic patient, it has for a good many years been higher than other CCGs. And if you look at our diabetes prescribing costs compared to the CCGs that we're matched against, our costs are somewhere between 2 million and 250,000 more than any other CCG. The dietitians, it's small scale so far, but have done some really fantastic work around weight loss, and are managing to particularly focusing on patients who are using high doses of insulin, managing to get insulin dosages right down through fairly modest weight loss. And so that's certainly one area that we really want to focus on and do more of.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Stuart. Any other questions for Stuart? Okay, so just pass the board's thanks to you and your team for such hard work over last year, Stuart, and thanks for coming.
Okay, no problem. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that is the end of the meeting. We have to consider the following resolution: that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the remainder of this meeting due to the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, publicity on which would be prejudicial to the public interest. Past that. As such, I'll bring this meeting to an end. I'll wish you all who are not attending the confidential meeting a happy summer, and we'll see each other in September, when hopefully we'll be the European champions. So enjoy tonight, whoever's watching the football. The confidential meeting will start in